The protagonist was introduced to be a 17-year-old high schooler named Lee Nori. He was still finding answers about the dreams while other students were enjoying their time in the classroom. Out of nowhere, a sudden sensation was felt by everyone as a purple magic circle appeared underneath them, shocking everyone, and before any of them could comprehend the situation, they lost the record of time. They looked like all of them had been transported to a different location, and while Amori was trying to understand the situation, other classmates were panicking about such a turn of events. None of them were able to find the answer, and out of nowhere their attention was caught up by a lady flying in the air, calming everyone down, telling them about the location to be a gap of the world. The lady had blonde hair, fair skin, and a lovely aura. She introduced herself to be a goddess, and while the others were still finding answers, she continued to tell them that they were summoned to another world to become heroes in order to defeat the Demon King. Majority of the students were completely blank and confused by those words, and she continued to tell them that the complete souls were going to be transported to one of the empires named Hyan. Lee realized that all those words were truly something one could expect from a noble and the god. This then concluded that due to some of the constraints they could only decide on that place with just a little time, and she was going to give them some gifts for visiting it. Her hand reached everyone's heads, and they felt a different kind of sensation at once. When it reached the heads of Inner, she instructed that none of them should use it for any kind of toxicity and shall use their powers and right regards to lead the people. The next time they opened their eyes, they were in the middle of a king court surrounded by multiple soldiers and could see a girl painting on her breath, being happy on success. Others also started praising the lady, believing that life was going to be good from then on due to the heroes. The king immediately silenced each and every one of them, and he himself stood from the throne to thank them for their arrival. He was introduced to be the emperor of the empire Hyan, and then after bowing in front of them with other court members, welcomed everyone to help in defeating the Demon King. All those are being treated like nobles, and one of the class representatives came out front to request the majesty to not to go on his knees and then ask if there is any way by which they could be sent back to the original world. SA came up forward and introduced herself as IA, telling that it is possible but only after a month from the full moon rises into the sky, marking their day of departure. Further offered even the ones who do not want to fight the demon thing to stay aside. However, for all those were something not could be expected that someone will summon them just for a sightseeing trip. As per AIA, they will return at the same time into their previous world with no time being passed, and still Lee was in wonder about finding the catch. Those words pertained to whispering continued into the her of the students, and the saint inquired by herself about someone's wish. She again requested all of them with her hands joined to save the country and the world, realizing that it was the time that one of the individuals, being self-centered and thinking himself I'm a hero, will come up. However, there was no movement from the hurdle of the classmates as all of them were blank. The class representative again came forward to ask for time from those guys as they were not able to make that season right away. Did not react at all as all of them were being handled well, and then later clarified to them that he was going to give them a complete month to make the decision of either returning to the world or to be a hero for the last of them to enjoy the day. Other students were delighted with those words, while Enora decided that the cuisine was much more important than anything else. The complete height of his was filled with different kinds of thoughts of the food that he was going to receive in that world, and out of nowhere another magic circle, yellow in color, appeared underneath him, and he did not even bid as his belief was that they were transporting him to the dining area using magic. His thoughts still struck the food he was going to eat, full of spices and flavors. Just then one of his classmates interrupted his thoughts, calling him loud and quite shocked, and then it was revealed that he was the only one standing above the magic circles while the others were not even in the area of it. It was full of confusion, and before he comprehend the real situation, he was again summoned to the place which was given the same wife into a white aura, and the goddess again welcomed the souls into the path. She again introduced herself and was quite shocked, with the parents once again questioning if he was really the one who just passed the same way. On getting the reconfirmation, she started finding the reason for such an occurrence with her finger on the cheek. Only clear understanding was that his soul was against someone to a different place. However, she had to follow the rule, and so she gave him another gift as he was passing the path again. As soon as the gift was granted, the yellow magic circle appeared once again, and the next moment he was dropped inside a house full of antennae, with a thought that the earlier one was purple, however the current one was yellow in color with a different pattern on it. His thought was interrupted as his current situation was not meant for it. He was confronted with belts, locks, and a mask on his face, and the man seeing him was pleased with the successful summoning. Looking like a crazy scientist, he was camped by another individual who was licking his tongue, calling Anori subject number 12, and both of them were depicting an image of mental patients who turned out to be scientists. He was placed with the magic eye possessed by Lee while he was just finding the real comprehension of the situation, believing that the summoning was really bad. For this time the experiment was going to start right away, and one of the scientists even started packing the right instrument he was going to use it, and it was not long enough that Inori realized the same thing we have been discussing above. Those guys were going to conduct an experiment on the magic eye, and for that they Old Man picked up a knife instrument in front of Honora's eye because he was aware that if a human is summoned from a different world then they receive a magic eye. Old Man then revealed his clothes, showing him different other recruitments which could be used to kill and perform experiments, and his only job was finding such eyes to really adjust for the precautionary measures that the doctor took his hand forward a magic circle, telling that it was done in order to prevent him from going on a rampager, losing control. However, it looks like that Inori was not having any issues in handling such a low-level magic. Old Man was shocked as the effect was many, and it was written on his lower face that he was finding the answer to that question, that even that advanced level hypnosis did not work upon him. Soon his subordinate screamed in shock to tell the doctor that the subject possessed the magic eye in his right side and a truth magic eye in the left one. It was pretty shocking for both of them, and they started celebrating it instantly on finding such a rare specimen, making him the perfect subject without wasting any time. Both of them picked up their instruments, possibly called weapons, start the experiment right away. While Lee believed it was really torture in real regards that experiment, Leah was traveling with just the thought of such happening with him. He was deciding to use his right eye to find a way in order to escape from there. However, it looked like that such a thing was not required at all, as soon there appeared a green magic circle and he was about to be teleported once again. Other two doctors looked really confused about such a thing, while Iori was happy and she was having a smile on her face because it was happening once again for the third time and visited the same path. This was confusing as it had never happened again, while Lee believed it was just inevitable as there was no control of him on such a thing. He was searching for an answer for such things, and the goddess was shocked as it was for the first time that the thing was occurring, and then decided to find the answer for the same and to let him know in later times. The top was pretty casual to be done with one of the goddess, and he was again granted within another gift due to the rules, and this time he was summoned to the place of a novel-like girl who was pleased with the arrival of his subject and was accompanied by an elf maid having a smirk on her face. The elf instantly started praising the lady on her magic power, calling it to be something extraordinary while calling our man monster, making him go wild. In true regards, that time he was treated like a summoned creature, and in order to wind him under a contract his blood was about to be attracted with a pin. However, once again he left both of them turned and confused and was teleported to the gap of the world, meeting the court once again and irritating her right away. This time he was going to get the answer of such occurrences, and the goddess revealed Welby, and that every time the target was going to be a strong soul in order to pass through the gap of the world. It was the first requirement. Since the lead possessed one of the rear ones, it was him being the target every time. He was not expecting those, as he was not someone who believed in God at once, but God does clarify that this was not the criteria because it was all the soul, clarifying that it will stop only after his soul was binding to a hero contract. As per the rules, she again gave him another gift as a reward for visiting the gap of the world, and this time he was told by a lady at the Adventure Guild that his skill was stolen, and this was his fourth summoning. He was just a few steps away and making a contract with the soul there, and right then a black magic circle appeared underneath him and he was summoned once again. The place was lighting up only at the top and was looking quite haunted. This was the fifth one, and it was a black magic with a black image. Being completely exhausted for the gift, he was granted one of that domain, and as soon as the next summoning occurred he was called to a deserted place filled with black aura, being praised by a huge number of demons for the king to be resurrected. It was a good place to become a demon lord because it was written all over his face. However, the sex summoning was even not enough. During the seventh one, the goddess clarified that the boy possessed some incredible abilities, clarify that the last one is going to arrive and it would be the seventh, giving him a gift for the last time by merging all the others and asking him to check the status. As soon as he reaches there for the last ones, he was again called a hero by the subject who had summoned him. However, the next question was just raised on his identity, as there were three others standing in front of him, including two girls and a boy. The boy was introduced to be a high school student the same age as Inori, named Ryuto. One of the girls was Tamaki, who was calling for the other two by their names like they were some friends. Third girl of short hair and brown eyes was all three of them started the conversation, while Inori just sat at the back casually, and their intention was called up by the king sitting on the throne. It gave us confusion because of the things he was only targeting for three, and soon realized that the man was talking about him who was not summoned but was a freeloader along with the others being called. He just screamed out, finding the answer to the question, grabbing attention of the others instantly. All four of them were standing in front of the king, with Aner being aside from the other three, and the king pointed towards them, telling them that three were the heroes while the fourth one was just an ordinary person caught in the summoning. His confusion was because nothing like this had happened earlier, and soon his voice was taken over by a girl who looked quite excited, telling that she, being the first princess, summoned them. The girl was so full of himself that Lee ended up with his question in mind about the entrance, and the lady continued to introduce them to the kingdom named Rising Sun. The king constituted not only humans but also demi-humans, with demons being the enemies. Those guys were being led by a demon king. Target was the invasion of human territories. It was the Mart Empire, which asked the Human Federation to summon heroes. The lady was just happy because she was holding the royal blood, so summoned them and was going to train them in order to find the demon king. Forces. Inori was pale to that explanation as he was confused with the quantity over quality factors. All of them were commanded to do their best in order to defeat the Demon King, while Inori was just holding his laugh. That time she was calling up for the Empire's name. Ryu instantly came forward to find a way in order to reach back to his original world. However, his intentions were turned down effectively by the lady, as there was no one, and those words were shocking for the three high schoolers. Being friends of each other, Princess was grateful for whatever they had received. However, Inori was confused if which empire was telling the truth, as one must be the lie from the other. Then called for a magical item in order to confirm the blessings they had received. Rio was the first to come up front for his identification, and it was introduced to be a limited break. While AA was holding the blessing of barrier magic, the third girl received the magic of affinity, while Inner had just detected it in his vault. Kane gave a fake expression on his blessing being called, and it was enough to let Lee know that it was an odd one out. Soon after that, numerous physical activities were conducted in order to assist their magical and physical abilities. One who was leading with scores in every other criteria was Ryu, while the others were keeping the pace in magic measurement or superhuman results. The only one who was lacking behind and even forming a little magic was Inori, who was sterling with his hands. He was covered in sweat with even a bit of work, and his abilities were far much better in his previous world. The man was so tired that even he was put into the spotlight of utmost shame for having lower abilities than a girl, while the others were standing into the hurdle keeping him aside. During the night there was a meeting called up in Ryu to discuss the future, while Inori was just not happy with them possessing huge ones in comparison to his room. One of the girls was just not happy with Lee's presence, as he was not one of the heroes. It was shameful once again. And while Hamaki tried to contact him, he realized that she was the only girl which shows concern if he was caught up in something. Ryu instantly calmed all of them down to tell them that his ability was important, and while everyone was having a different evaluation, the captain commanded the barrier image to protect the detection holder. Inori was in the middle of finding the cute girl and that serious conversation. He realized that all three of them were good looking, and it looked like that Inori was a by the conversation turned serious, and they started distressing about their intention of staying in the country. And before the correct answers arrived, Inori immediately showed them a book and asked them to not utter a single word. The book was depicting that all of them were being bugged, and that call made everyone go on his guard instantly. His detection skills were really something pretty useful. Actually, his blessing was like the one which throws him into the middle, giving a pretty good view around his surroundings, something useful even beyond the balls. At the right moment someone was dropping on them from right outside the door, and Aori just made it even more awkward to send her by opening the gate instantly. He tried the same thing multiple times, but there was no outcome arising, so he just wrote onto the paper asking A to cast a soundproof magic barrier. She agreed to the same and then tried her best to cast a green barrier covering all of them, standing in the front with her melons bouncing. It was exhausting, as she was just knew the time period for the same was not going to. Or praised her for the task and left her with a blush and smile, and it was a clear picture of being flirting at the time of serious discussion. Only reason why all of them were even dropping upon them was because their power was something which could be useful as well as a threat to the world. Tamaki did not like that acceptance from the captain and raised voice against it, so clarified that there must be something desperate for them to be called and Toriad up on the situation. It must be that the nation was facing some financial crisis at the moment. There must be various other reasons, and at the moment when used his detection still defined the king walking in the corridor. He realized that it was not something an emperor would do, being married by a smaller number of soldiers. Tamaki at first thought about the same thing, but then found that the food was pretty good, and even after being simple was having a lot of SP. Lee in that regard was having a different thought, as he did not like that at all. But to clarify enough, the room in which all of them were kept was really plain and small for a hero. Anyhow, he could not discuss the experience of his own first summoning, as many of them were aware about it. Lee then went on to say that they needed to find a route from the location, and then only they could find a way to return to their world. All the others heard him with total concentration and clarify that since only those three were the only, they were never letting them return back, and it must be that they were hiding two reasons behind their return, as they did not want them to. Ryu then asked them that they could not fight the nation by themselves, having no power to start off at the moment, so they should just work along to read and find the right situation to run off. Tamaki out of nowhere closes the distance between her and Lu, stunning Inori of her true intentions, while she just focused to read on his eye, which was yellow in color, and with that Inori concerns about his odd eye raised, and he covered it with his hand. Being embarrassed of a Japanese guy finding it, it was like he was holding some secret which he could not reveal, and the captain supported him along with telling them to leave him alone as it should not be pushed, while Lee supposed that Ryu identified him as a patient having different color due to some birth issues. The night when he went back to his room, started questioning the reasons he was possessing those eyes, and then remembered about checking his status with it. Out of nowhere a green screen appeared in front of him, and he was shocked as it came up with a ring telling him his name and some high members and pets including magic power etc. He were still unanswer why his condition during a physical test was so low even after his stats were that much higher. To get the answer he decided to move on to the skills, and the first one was steal, the second being the dark magic, third one was the detection, which he got onto the 7th summoning and soon realized that the vampire one was granted to him when he was summoned by the noble girl accompanied by an elf. He possessed those teeth which were used in order to soothe the blood and move on to the on the skill. He realized that he had one of the hatred from God which was preventing him from using his powers under the sun, even though due to his vampire powers he was not even liking garlic in the food. The true reason behind his flirting and being untraced by the girls was because he was called up by the nerves carrying blood underneath to the neck. It was embarrassing that he was not able to identify all those things till the moment, and he felt that he was not aware of himself until then, even on remembering about his past, where from the first to the last summoning he was given with different kinds of skills every time by the god that included detection, where he could detect a majority of them inside the range. In order to test his second one, he picked up the canal stand from a side, and after removing it he used his magic in order to forge a weapon out of it between his both hands, and sheer concentration that stand turned out to be quite a sharp knife. About his right eye was of Apoet, my stick eye specialist for seeing, allowing him to see through everything. Only one which was the confusion was about his left name to be the true my stick eye, giving my skill of transferring magic circles inside himself, allowing him to activate within himself. At will he turned back the weapon into its original shape, thinking about learning the magic in the future. While there was still a lot of it he needed to understand the status board, the most interesting was about his vampire power, which states that if he was sucking more blood then he would turn the individuals being the target's ghouls. The second reward was that he could turn them there as his servant if he died with his blood. Further, he will also receive the memories of the one he was sucking blood off, giving him the status of a complete monster. Further, he could even steal their skills with their blood, but the problem was he could only use his full power at night. His skills were making him much more powerful than the others, but the only issue was he needed to understand the world as well as the body. The next day all the heroes were called along with Inori by one of the commanders of the kingdom who was going to teach them martial arts, being a lady named Ida. Inori was still not able to understand why everyone was turning out to be a female into the nation, and then realized that it must be the financial crisis forcing the nation to adopt them. Itida then asked that normally they will start with the martial arts, but it was not required in their case since 3 of them already possess a part of magic in themselves. Inori was already willing to get out of that martial art training. To diagnose, we used his skill view and technique in order to know the stats possessed by the individual. As it was revealed, each one of them had surpassed the human limits. Each then asked everyone to choose whatever they want to after learning the basic martial arts. However, for Inori things were going to be different, as he needed to build up his strength. His training began where he had to do some push-ups and was monitored by the Ida continuously. His face was completely exhausted with the continuous training, as day was not his piece of the case and he could not survive sunlight as being a vampire. The training continued till long, however it was interrupted by the first princess with some other ladies. For talk, Inori was ready with that lady, however he was interested in knowing who the other one was, realizing it must be princess as she was accompanied by a maid. The expression given by the lady was very calm, however sinister, had a fake smile. She had greeted both of them, and the lady revealed that she was there to observe training, while the first princess was still full of herself, asking them to be grateful. While Inner was busy in thoughts, the other girl approached him by the second princess. Inner was completely blank as he had not expected a princess to approach him directly. The lady was holding a fake smile on her face. In the afternoon, Inori was taken to the inside where he was accompanied by the second princess who was going to teach him there. He still was awkward as he was having a separate class while the other 3 were being trained by the first princess in a separate room. The only reason she backed out from training Inori is one of the 3 LG was not the hero, it was against her status. As the lesson started, the second princess took a stick in her hand, however was interrupted in the middle by Inori for a question. She again brought back her fake smile on her face and inquired if the second princess was the younger one. She replied with an answer which she had already expected and had denied his claims, blowing all those things over the circumstances. The story behind the same was that the heir to the throne is the first princess, and while Inner tried to understand, he realized that it was really complicated. Through the book she came to know that there has always been an issue when it comes to royal succession, and he understood through the explanation of the lady during the lesson that the kingman was saved by defeating the demon king by one of the heroes, and it was founded by a female magician. That lady threw a van and defeated the demon king all by herself. In other words, the complete founder of the rising sun was named to be a witch. It was the only reason those people had started worshipping witch rather than God, and the throne was always passed down to the woman. As for the can't see, you were just acting as regent. As said, even a divorce could lead to the transfer of the complete throne authority to her, and it was also through the classes of the second princess learned the basics of magic. Even during all that time the boy was slacking off in the classes, being under watch by the second princess. When the night fell, when Inori was in his restroom, he realized that the next day's class was going to be about magic and the practicality would come the day after the boy had borrowed a magic book from the second princess and he was turning pages of the same, and it was quite awkward to ask for it in front of the lady who kept the fake smile on her face at that time and used to slack in her classes. However, in a contrary, she just acted like a doll, not showing any displeasure. Finally came up with a magic circle and crafted over it an explanation written in the below, and he decided to use his left yellow eye through my stick eye to store the circle within it. He was going to try to activate it. I will give a TR as told, however it was not working as the same was not even stored in his eye. When he continued the same task with other magic circles while turning the pages of the book, he came up with nothing at the end. He just closed the book as it was a total failure. However, he tried to lift up his morals and set his focus on another eye. Turned towards the ink and pen, he drew a magic circle on another paper. Trying to recall it, the place where he obtained those eyes was the same where the mad doctor was trying to hypnotize him to get his experiment done on both of the eyes of his new subject. That advanced hypnotic magic was stored by Inori in his eye, and for his instant remembering techniques and photographic memory, he was able to remember and draw the same image right on the paper. It was the same magic circle from the same world as the magical iron. At the moment he tried to set the focus of his yellow eye onto their sensation felt by him right away. It was a kind which he had never felt before, and his eyes blew up with some lightning around it. Wondering if the boy had succeeded, immediately rang the bell in order to call someone, and as one of the maids arrived he asked her for a favor, leaving her completely confused of the true intentions of the boy. Before she could deny or accept that request, he used his my stick eye to cast the magic circle over the lady, and the lady was shocked with that sudden casting. The magic circle was inscribed in the eye of the maid, and she looked pretty, being controlled and in a hypnotized position. In order to test his waving his hands around the lady, did she showed no sign of self-control, and he then asked her about the color of the undergarment she was wearing. It was quite a ridiculous question, yet the maid answered without any hesitation, defining it to be a black, and Inori found that she was telling the truth with the help of her other eye. He finally understood that the magic had really been revealed, and then looking and understanding the circumstances, he wondered if his my eye could only style the magic circles from the world where he had obtained it. Inori went into deep thought and realized that in this case he could only stow the hypnosis that fell into his eye. However, the next moment he denied it and tried to draw another circle onto the blank paper. He was able to remember various magic circles and says he had been summoned multiple times from the green one to the blue and directly as the Demon King, since each and every one of them he was able to remember it, and tried to store the summoning magic circle into the mystic eye. As soon as he drew and cast the same into his yellow eye, it was activated on the floor. It would be like a real magic circle, and as a summon is completed, he brought back to a different world using his own magic, and he successfully moved to the forest area near the capital. He was processing some quite good skill in both of his eyes, which will allow him for long-distance vision and the perspective shift of the god's mic eye. Since the boy was already outside and was in a deserted area of the fur, decided to use his other skills if we could utilize the same at night, and then decided to use the black magic in order to lift huge garbage through his telekinesis power, and it turned out to be a successful act as it was done with an ease. Actually, a non-living stance can easily be dominated with the power of darkness, and through that the boy could easily move those items and store them into his shadow. It was a tremendous sight to view upon and see those things being controlled by Inori. Their only drawback was he could not influence the non-dominated objects with the dominated ones. However, he could stop the domination and influence them by hurting it. In order to test his net daily, decided to use the black magic shadow movement, and as soon as he marked on his own shadow, he was engulfed by it and was able to travel from the ground and to return back from one of the tree, which was one of the convenient, giving him an extra hand over traveling distance. By him on space of the shadow was quite spacious too, and he used his domination skill on when the rocks, thinking about starting to acquire, and then cast the weapon creation over the same to forge the complete stone into a huge sword. He then tried to memorize the movements of the Exeta, which was teaching them in the morning through his red eye, and with ease he was able to imitate the same moves at exact perception. His movements with the sword were to the point and firm. He was able to continue the practice for long, giving him an advantage to repeat the training as much as he wanted. Out of sudden his body felt exhausted and he laid down on the floor wondering about it. There came up a status window green screen telling him about the acquisition of the Schwartzman ship for level 1. He was happy with the acquisition even though it took a time, but it was a great skill and he didn't decide to level it up. Just then something called up for his attention as there was some rustling into the bushes, and he ran off to inquire. He found an organism not able to identify and wondered about it being a monster. He then used his skill of identification and came to know that was Kiko, a monster having a terrible face, red eyes and tongue be split into two, drooling continuously. The stats possessed by it was something which was not normal, and however it was one of the specialties of the rising sun, as a complete bed could be made just by feathers. Question was if that country was really interested in such terrible monsters and was thinking of not being the target. He already had some on the list which were weaks and was trolling around the forest, and there were also some others whose stats were far more superior than his current ones, and which was the issue that either they were extremely on a huge level or totally on a weaker side. He went into deep thought of what his next move should be, and if the issue was not in the monsters but himself, Inori soon realized that in a fight, even though he could win, there might be some issues when multiple people come up at him at once. In the end, he decided to just retreat and come back after her preparation. It then turned to the royal castle of the Rising Sun Kingdom, where footsteps would be heard walking inside, and it was stopped by a cheetah who was questioning the second princess. Walking inside the castle at that time without any guards or security, second princess did not show a little fear on her face and kept smiling on, not using magic tools during their training. The trainer had proper reasons behind the same, as she believed that all three were under training while being under the strength 1 and they could not use such tools before having basic martial arts skills. Second princess was insisting continuously on her to teach them about those tools at once during the beginning in order to give them better. A chat through her body movement clarify that even though it would be good, however, if one relied on weight from the beginning, then there might be chances that they will turn out weak, and which was why the lady was focusing on building up their body as well as strength along with their mind to prepare them for the battlefield and better cause. Somehow the second princess did not like the attitude of the Ida speaking to her in that way, however she just agreed with it while her fake smile was still on her face, and then apologized for unnecessarily speaking with someone holding the strongest human title. There was an awkward silence around the corridor for a while, and finally Itida revealed that the girl did not smile as she used to, and it looked like that the arrow hit the target right on the spot, making the second princess to turn around, clarifying her current position of smiling with a fake one eye. It looked like she was aware from the beginning, and then without moving the concept to a shift instantly asked her about her thoughts of the first princess. Second princess still held the calmness and started praising the first one on having talent, reputation, conviction, and ideas, and at the moment Ida raised her lantern to ask if she meant whatever the lady was saying, but before she could even continue the second princess stopped her, telling that even the ball had years and she need to be cautious, reminding her of the truth. She clarified that any bad mouthing about the front princess led her to face punishment. It should have sealed her mouth, and then again there spread an awkward silence around the corridor while the lady was continuously thinking that the second princess should not worry anyhow, as things were going to be done for better. A few days later, when the heroes were under training with the Nori being sidelined once again, telling that it had already been 2 weeks since they had arrived, the 3 heroes were training well in the martial arts acquisition. Ryu tested his sportsmanship skills and Hugh was doing well with his continuous learning. Taki was right behind him and learning the staff technique, which will help as a weapon to store her magic. Her strike also on the ground was quite effective and fruitful, and the lady always uses strength against brain, making her a muscular head. Coming to Aloe, she was into archery, making her vulnerable to the skill she was possessing as a barrier. There was no requirement for it. Inori, while looking all 3 of them to find that the captain Ryu was good in combat, and right behind was Tamaki, who hold great strength both in long as well as close combats, and there was also AWA having her skills into barrier creation, making them one of the perfect team and in great synchronization. As for the case of Innor, his training started just a few days ago and the focus currently was not on the swordsmanship but on the dabar of throwing techniques, and he was doing well in it. His stealth and trap disarming training was also going underway, and there might be question if those boys were trying to make him some Kindoff scout, as it would be a great utilization of the detection. When the knife fell, he used to cast his summoning magic and visit the forest area through his yellow summoning circle. There he was ling his own skills through continuous practice, and for that day he was going to use domination scale on this knife to make it move freely inside the forest, marking the targets and then using the release effect on it at the right time for a straight attack. As soon as he released it, the knife directly attacked one of the trees, stabbing it. Diagnos realized that during the day his skills were at their lowest because the sun god's hatred was truly terrible. He continued his training of increasing the level of the skills, moving on to Shadow 1. The moment he used his shadow technique, Monster Keka was lurking inside the forest trying to find food. It was completely unaware that Inori will come at instant pace from his shadow skill to attack it, leaving her just to scream in defense in order to fight that he had cast it onto a different skill acquisition through threats formed by weapon synthesis and strengthened by the power of weakness. He tied up the complete monster using it and called the skill as Black Death. Silk Monster could not do anything and was just screaming out of pain, while Diagnosed was using his yellow My Stick. I cast the hypnosis skill, making her unable to move on her own accord. The hypnosis spell was cast successfully and it was visible in the eyes of the monster, and as soon as it was completed, Imori removed his hand from the silk technique and he was happy that his one of the exercise to capture the Black Death silk and hypnosis was completed without any failure. Diagnosed, without giving a second thought, took out his knife and then sliced the truth of the monster, as the living man could not be dominated through the skill. However, once they were out of breath, he could do the same easily using his domination skill. He lifted the monster into the air and then stored it inside his shadow space. At that moment, Diagnosed used 3 of the skills and then traveled the shadow area by himself and saw various things lying on the floor including the monster. There was no one looking at him inside the shadow monsters and no one could travel the same, so he left the hesitation through his heart and then opened his mouth. He stamped his vampire teeth into the monster's neck to suck blood in order to raise her his own level. There might be an increase in his status too. One of the targets was easily captured and he then moved on to the other and then used the same skill to find its location. It was going to be a green monster this time, sleeping peacefully at night, not aware of what was going to happen to him next. The monster was not looking tasty, but he was not left with any other choice. He decided to keep on hunting until his level was breached, and so he did. When the dawn came, Inori was completely tired, and when he returned to his room using the teleportation, he just lay on the bed and slept peacefully. May did not leave even a little chance to wake up at the right time because Inner never used his hypnosis magic on her until or unless he had to do something unconventional using his ketosis skills. On the way he had gathered a lot of information about the rising sun, and it is said that the current princess struggled to have children, and since the country is fundamentally a nation centered around the queen's bloodline, it was said that the princess will give birth to the next birth line. However, strangely there came the circumstances where the people of the royal family started dying at a younger age, leaving no one to inherit the throne. Left with no choice, the royal line bought a distant duchess as the king's concubine, and she gave birth to one of the girls named Aliyah. It was the same current second princess who was loved by his nation, and through her kind hard work and diligence she had earned the people's support. Everything changed at the moment she turned 7, and there was the birth of another child between the king and the queen, and it was given the name Amanda. Amanda stands for beloved, and the girl was fiery from the beginning, and it was because of her magic and talents she was loved by the queen as well as the king from the start. Elia, even though had a lot of knowledge through the books, was not able to possess or inherit those magic powers, and she would stop receiving education for the session. At the moment when Amanda turned 7, she became the first princess, and Alia was left behind, while the nation people also turned their faces against the ones they had praised before, taking the sides of Amanda and making her live behind without any support. As Alia's name lost its meaning, she turned her back onto those people as well as Amanda, and once she was ignored and abandoned by the king, she decided to live a life having a fake smile on her face, continuously looking at the suffocating castle. Diagnos was thinking about all those things while he was sitting in the class being taught by Alia, and she came up out of nowhere requesting the boy to wake up, as she was trying to teach him something which was important in order to make him grow, for threatening him to not receiving any points for the lessons if he continued sleeping. Inori, without paying me attention, YWN at her once again. Ali out of nowhere started raising his concerns over the boy learning concealment and martial art techniques, which was some of the gifted ones, into one of the area, and even though he could not use magic in that world and was trembling with his own hands control during the training, he was feeling embarrassed as even some of the ordinary people could perform those, including the maid who used his magic to clean his dishes as well as clothes. There are very few inside the world who could not use such basic magic, and she then told that if Ida was taking her time to teach him about some martial techniques, then he should be pleased about it, and the only reason she believed that those guys were doing that is because they were aware of the true value possessed by the boy. Out of nowhere there was a sudden change into the character of Alia, who smashed her hand onto the table to ask the boy to get serious, as I need to put more effort to give an excellent result. Inner did not expect it and his face turned pale. However, the lady just asked the boy to follow her to a location. Both of them started walking underground, being lit up with candles, and as they were traveling to the basement they reached to use gate yellow and color, having something beyond their imagination. On the other side, Alia instantly used her little part of the magic, deciding to use that rather than lessen and try to open the gate. The share motivation, she tried to lift his mood while telling that he should be feeling pathetic for being called weak rather than the hero compared to the others, and Enor was still trying to find the answer with this confused face. What was the sudden change that he had faced? It is truly about the second princess, whose face was telling a different story than her emotions that were hidden into her heart, perhaps due to several failures. It might be that she had learned how to hide her emotions and was given the name of Dew Princess. She was acting on the commands of the first one. However, at the moment when Inori was facing the lady, it looked like she had removed the veil and was showing her true emotions. As both of them entered the huge room, there was a purple magic circle which was crafted over the head, with them being into the middle and Inor behind her. Following the command is to follow. Aaliyah then told him that the rate at which she was going, there might be chances that he would be kicked out from the current position, as in the eyes of the queen there was no requirement of nurturing an incompetent person who was not going to give something back into the reward. It looked like the face of Aaliyah that whatever she was speaking with utmost faith and was completely true. Amori never believed that something that ridiculous could be a reason, because he was possessing the detection blessing, which was useful at the time they were going to battle the Demon King. Alia believed that it truly was the truth, but however, since he was not putting any kind of effort, questions were raised on his inclusion into the team, and then inquired why he was not trying a little harder. Belia was throwing those words to the boy as she herself has seen him sleeping and slacking off into the classes, while Inori at a different point of view at the moment when he remembered that he was giving his best in training himself up at night because it was not possible for the sing during the day. Ino then continued the act of his attitude, and while telling that he was doing the best, she turned to tell that he just had some basic skills and was not suited for studying. By the way, the second princess was teaching him. Alia looked like she was pissed at day 2 with his current reply, and he clarified that the room was completely protected by the barrier with no one coming or entering without her permission. As in or tried to open the gate, he had not expected that the lady would raise her cake and would try to attack him from behind, giving him a taste of heel. Inori was pushed to the wall with just that one take, and as he turned around he was completely blank and confused about what just happened. Ellie was serious as she did not want the boy to turn into the same situation and she was currently in, as there might be chances that whenever he was going Tob thrown out of the castle he would turn into a monster's hand to be just food, and it would be embarrassing enough at that moment. The lady was truly not the dull princess, however, a broad and a noble woman who was trying her best to teach the boy what would be the right move at the moment. The motivation from the lady was telling that he needed to change, and as soon as the sentence was completed Inori started laughing out of nowhere, leaving the girl confused. What was such a kind act when she was her best teacher? Out of nowhere he praised the lady, giving her a blush on the face. Imvan praising the skills as well as the strength possessed. While she was confused, he told that his hunger to survive was far more superior than her to teach him, and those words were not something which Alia had expected from a mouth like him. Looking into the boy and giving him a stare look, she finally realized that she had done wrong into interpreting the skills possessed by the boy, as there was a tremendous aura flowing through his body and the boy was truly aware that he was one. The words that he could be kicked out from the castle, and so he was going to find a way. He then went back to his area to remember that he was not to be exiled, as there was much more information to gather upon, and then turned into the training grounds where was practicing his knife technique, and believed that he needed to show them the true value of his detection blessing in order to secure a place. He was thinking of getting a dungeon press text to show them what he was really capable of. However, there was not going to be one in the place soon. The training was called off by the lady, and he, being exhausted, wondered if he should approach the Ada by herself to persuade the king. Without wasting much of the time, he called up for her and had a discussion, then moved to the cabin of Ada. There the lady called out all of his methods that the boy was thinking to pursue, and then moved all to tell that even though the lag enthusiasm during normal training his skills might be useful, the same thing was agreed by the Ada without any disagreement, and it was quite shocking for the boy. And then the final question came, where she wanted him to join as one of the cheetahs. She was aware that his skills were going to be of great use and could lead them to several successes, as his detection skills were more valuable than diamonds and dungeons. And the moment they would fight against the Demon King, the only reason she could not make him any kind of promise was because she was lacking in authority, and then clarified with a screen voice that the only way for him to be prevented by the expansion was to stand on his both feet and act as a normal soldier rather than a hero. As an Enori realized that if he joined the soldiers' army, then there might be chances that he will be bound in against the country. He will be standing against other soldiers, which was going to be a bit complicated in order to make his own moves. Then bowed against the lady to tell that was a tough decision to take right away. However, Yetta thought that the boy will accept it right away, and so she smashed the hands on the table to tell that he could come and find her right away in case he needed some help. As Sen turned to a few days later, it was his lesson classroom, where received the news that a mill from a neighboring country had arrived into the city, and Alia confirmed that there was a welcome party organized the next day. While sitting on the tea, he was just happy that day that he was not going to class for the next day, as she was not going to be available. He was also not invited amongst one of them, as he was lacking off in the class continuously. It was pretty easy to understand that he was being left on purpose, but not unintentionally. The next day the party was conducted, and the hero from the neighboring country was called up with proper ceremony, with the nation people standing on each of the sides throwing flowers. There were also soldiers who were raising the flags high, the Rising Sun Kingdom, and Anor was looking at all the events through the window, wondering if they truly had to face a financial crisis or not, and that was the only one left behind without any call to attend the party. And in case if he attended the same, he was aware that he needed to explain his position to the foreign dignity as someone who was caught into the hero summoning as an abnormal existence. Inori was not ready to face any kind of investigation from the old man and the secretary, which was going to be a hassle, and so he just laid down on the bed, Even though he was not interested in attending the event physically, he didn't decide to use his powers to view what's really going on immediately using mystic eyes of poetry, and then using his long-distance sight he found that both the princess were standing in the middle pretty well dressed up. Once again Alia's face looked like a smiling doll, and their place was completely decorated with luxurious items and food, and Inori was just lurking over it in the mind with no access to stories. Inori then went on to remember what the meat told her when he casted the hypnosis gill, as the party was conducted as a major factor for the economic crisis, and Intruder was the queen who was trying to show her economy well to the foreign candidates, and in this place she was not even listening to the advice of the king anymore and was just standing behind acting as a support. Through the eyesight his attention turned to the three individuals who were standing against the current hero of the nation, and there might be those who were also three, and the third one with his ears and the eyes were looking pretty gloomy. The last one was one of the individuals who was looking like a blonde guy having a look of Japanese, so he decided to assess, and the name came out to be old-fashioned and could be the one whose title was fitting for a hero. The boy was shouting at Ryu, and as Anna used his lips-reading technique he heard that the man was calling to bring Inori right in front of him as he won to challenge the boy for a duel. As asked, Inner was called with the imitation by the Lady Alia, and everyone's attention was instantly shifted to Set. As soon as Inori arrived he was invited for a duel by the blonde-hair guy, and there spread an awkward silence between both of them, with Lady Alia being in between, having no suggestion. It was not against her, but everyone standing aside, including the heroes, were not able to understand the current situation. On asking for the reason behind the same, the man screamed out to tell that he wanted to prove his own worth to the goddess, that he is not worthy, and he started to think that he was not aware of anything about it. Hero then turned to tell him that he might have also visited the white space where he met with the daughter, and he was stunned at the moment when he saw her, and she was quite tremendous and beautiful. Inner, hostile, confused in what there was relation between him, called off for a duel in that event, and at that moment the boy modified that he had proposed to the goddess, and the only invitation the boy got that he need to defeat Inori in order to consider